I'm standing on the right-of-way of the former Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac Railroad. Nowadays, these tracks are part of the CSX Railroad's main north-south line. While now long gone, during the American Civil War, there was a railroad station here which served the community of Guinea, Virginia. Brian at Guinea Station, Virginia, the place where General Stonewall Jackson, his life finally came to an end. He was wounded by one of his own men, brought to Guinea Station, a plantation or a farm, and he passed away in the farm office, which we are going to go visit. In 1863, America was in the throes of a terrible civil war. It was 2 May 1863, a Saturday. General Jackson was in command of a Confederate force about 20 miles northwest of here, near Chancellorsville, Virginia. They had spent the afternoon fighting and chasing the Union Army. As dusk began to fall, the fighting died down, and the two armies settled in for the night. General Jackson and members of his staff made their way out in front of the Confederate main line on horseback. Jackson was preparing for tomorrow's battle and scouting the enemy positions. As the group returned to their line in the fading light of dusk, sentries from the 18th North Carolina Infantry Regiment spotted the group. Believing them to be enemy troops, they opened fire. Several of Jackson's party were killed. General Jackson was left severely wounded, struck by 3 rounds. He was removed from his horse, still very much conscious, and moved to a nearby aid station. A surgeon evaluated Jackson's severely wounded left arm, only to realize that if his general was going to have any chance of survival, the limb needed to be removed. The arm was amputated and the wound bandaged. This is the Fairfield Plantation office. During the war, this area looked much different. The Confederate military was using both the railroad station and the plantation as a large supply depot. The area was bustling with activity. Tents, supplies, horses, and wagons were everywhere, as personnel tended and managed to it all. Plantation buildings were turned into hospitals, which tended the constant stream of wounded the war was producing. On 4 May, Jackson was transported by horse-drawn ambulance to Guinea Station along the rail line, where Confederates had established a supply depot. More important to Jackson's needs, it was also the site of the Fairfield Plantation, which had been turned into a field hospital. When the ambulance arrived, the plantation owners, Tom and Mary Chandler, offered their personal home to General Jackson. The general refused and was taken next door to the plantation office to convalesce. However, Jackson did not improve. An infection took hold and his health declined. Despite the doctor's best efforts, on 10 May 1863, General Jackson died in the back room of the plantation office. Popular lore has it that his last words were, "Let us cross over the river and rest under the shade of the trees." His body was moved to Lexington, Virginia. A funeral took place on May 15, 1863, and he was buried in what is now known as the Stonewall Jackson Cemetery on Main Street. The plantation office is the only surviving building. It seems that sometime after the war ended, the Richmond, Fredericksburg, and Potomac Railroad purchased the property. By that time, the buildings were in terrible condition. The buildings that hadn't fallen down, the railroad company had torn down. with the exception of the plantation office. They turned it into what they called the Jackson Shrine. The main house once stood nearby, 100 feet northwest. Between the office and the house, there was a smokehouse. Here, on the opposite side of the office, once stood a goat barn, all long ago torn or fallen down. Here's an artist's rendering of what the place may have once looked like. This is where the Chandler home was located. The building is not open today, so I will do what I can to get some shots through the windows. The railroad ended up turning the property over to the National Park Service, who maintains the property today and likely will do so for generations to come. The railroad, which is why the supply depot and hospital was located here, and therefore remains tied to Stonewall Jackson's death, remains forever close by. Remember, life is a journey. Enjoy the ride, and thanks for watching.